Please remove her from the list. She makes everything look cheap. The words hit me before I even saw who said them. I stood near the mirror while the seamstress pinned the last edge of Emily's dress. The room was full of soft lighting and pale fabrics, but her voice cut straight through all of it. I did not move. I just felt the heat rise slowly in my chest. No one rushed to correct her. No one even looked confused. They simply glanced at me the way people look at clutter they keep meaning to throw out. Emily kept talking like I was a shadow. I just want the photos to feel elegant. I cannot have her ruining the vibe. Her fiancé's mother gave a small laugh, the polite kind people use when they agree but pretend they do not. The seamstress lowered her eyes. Someone shifted a rack of dresses to block me a little more. I stood there, trying to understand how easily my own sister could carve me out of her life with one careless line. 4 lines later, my voice finally reached my own mind. My name is Sarah Turner, 34 years old, financial analyst from Seattle. I have always been the one who holds everything together. Numbers, deadlines, bills, people. It never mattered how heavy it got. I just carried it. Maybe that is why this moment hurt so sharply. It showed me exactly what I meant to them. Not a sister, not a friend, not even a person. Just a wallet with legs. I kept still, pretending I was only studying the lace on Emily's sleeves. Inside, I felt something quiet shift. A small click. Like a door I never noticed before finally opening. I remembered every time I paid for her school trips. Her first apartment deposit. Her broken down car. The deposits I made without her even asking. All the time she cried and I fixed everything. I always believed that loyalty would come back in some shape, even a small one. Instead, I stood here being labeled cheap by the same woman whose entire wedding I was paying for. I took a slow breath and kept my voice low. Emily, did I do something wrong? She did not turn. No, I just want things a certain way. Her words were light, but the meaning was sharp. She did not say I was unwanted in those exact terms. She did not have to. The room already understood. For a moment, I wondered if anyone else had ever felt this kind of invisibility. The kind where your own family uses you like a resource and then acts embarrassed to stand next to you. That thought stayed with me longer than the sting. It made me think about how many people watch stories like this because they know exactly what it feels like to be pushed aside by the people they help the most. And in that quiet ache, I felt a strange comfort in knowing someone out there might be listening now. If you have ever carried a family that never carried you back, you already understand the place I'm standing in. If you want to stay with me while I walk through what happens next, I would be grateful if you stayed close, supported, and subscribed so we can face it together. Emily finally looked at me through the mirror. Her smile was thin. The guest list has been updated anyway. It makes more sense without too many extras. Extras. That was the second cut. This one landed deeper. I watched her tilt her chin as if the dress fitting was more important than the truth sitting between us. I could feel the weight of her pattern. She always softened her voice right before she drew blood. She rarely shouted. She never needed to. She learned early that quiet cruelty leaves deeper marks. I stepped back, pretending I wanted air, though what I really needed was distance. I walked out of the fitting room and into the hallway, where the boutique kept a small white table with printed schedules and sample menus. Sitting beside them was a fresh stack of guest lists. I picked one up because I already knew. I knew before I saw it. I felt it in the way her eyes refused to meet mine, in the way her future mother-in-law kept smiling at me like I was a volunteer instead of family, in the way silence filled in all the places love should have been. The paper shook lightly between my fingers as I scanned the names. Rows of cousins, old friends, people Emily had not spoken to in years. But not me, not anywhere. My name was gone. For a moment, everything inside me went very still. Not broken, not angry, just still, like the world had paused to show me something I had been refusing to see for years. I folded the list slowly and slipped it into my bag, because this was not just a mistake, it was a message, and I was finally ready to understand it. Your table has been reassigned. It made things cleaner this way. That was the line the coordinator whispered as she handed me the clipboard. Her voice was gentle, but the words carried the same cold edge I had heard earlier. I looked down at the guest list, expecting to see my name tucked somewhere quiet, maybe further down than I deserved, but still present. Instead, the space where I should have been was gone, not crossed out, not moved, erased. My eyes drifted over the page again, trying to catch any hint that this was a mistake. There was no mistake. The entire table I was supposed to sit at had been rearranged to make room for people Emily barely knew. I felt something sink inside me. Not a sharp pain, but a slow settling of truth. I understood, in a way I had tried not to, that this was intentional. This was designed. The coordinator shifted her weight as if she expected me to react. I kept my voice steady. "My name isn't here," she nodded once. A small movement that told me she already knew it. I stared at the blank space where my role should have been. It reminded me of every time my place in this family felt conditional. My sister always needed something from me, money, mostly. Support, stability. I gave it because I believed loyalty meant stepping in when others stepped back. I gave it because I thought it mattered. I remembered the months I covered rent when our parents struggled, the semesters I paid when Emily's tuition fell short, the bills I picked up because no one else could manage them. I always told myself it was fine. I made more money, I could afford to help. But there was a quiet cost in carrying everyone that long. I just never admitted it out loud. One time, years ago, Emily smiled at me in that easy way she used when she wanted something. She said, "You make more money. You don't need gratitude." I laughed it off then, though something in that sentence felt wrong. Now, standing here with my name missing, I finally felt the full weight of what she meant. It had never been love. It had always been convenience. I studied the list again, letting the truth settle in a place I had ignored for too long. Being needed was not the same as being valued. I had confused the two my whole life. I always hoped that being generous would earn a place, any place where I felt seen. Instead, it only made it easier for them to pretend I did not exist. Invisibility was the reward for never asking for anything back. I could feel old memories rising as I stood there. Childhood moments, small but sharp. Emily being called the bright one, the delicate one, the one who deserved protection. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who could handle things without praise. I never challenged it. I thought peace mattered more than fairness. I told myself it was okay if I stayed in the background. I told myself families did this. They leaned on the strongest person. They counted on them. But somewhere along the way, I became the person who paid for everything and still stood outside the door. The coordinator's eyes stayed on me, soft and uncertain. It made me realize she was waiting for something, maybe permission to speak. I let out a breath and said, "There must be a reason." She hesitated. "There is." Her pause stretched, pulling my attention deeper. The hallway felt smaller. I nodded once so she would continue. She lowered her voice. "Emily asked for some changes because guests kept asking who paid for everything. She said she wanted it to look like she handled things herself, so she asked us to remove certain names." She swallowed. "Yours was one of them." For a moment, I did not move, not because I was shocked, but because everything in her sentence confirmed what my heart already knew. My role was useful only until it became embarrassing. Emily wanted the image, not the truth. She wanted the praise without the weight of admitting she never carried anything alone. Hiding me made her look self-sufficient. Erasing me made the story cleaner. I let the silence stretch because I needed to feel the shape of this moment. This was not just a missing name. It was a message written in quiet strokes. My presence was helpful behind the scenes, but inconvenient in the spotlight. The person who paid for half the wedding did not fit the picture she wanted. I handed the clipboard back, my fingers steady even though my chest felt tight. I could hear my own breath, slow and controlled. Something inside me felt colder, but also clearer. I had spent years trying to earn a place by giving more than anyone asked for. All it earned me now was a blank line where my name should have been. As I stepped away, I felt a quiet shift inside me, like a door closing with a soft click. I understood what it meant. I understood what I had become to them, a secret they needed, not a sister they loved. And for the first time, I finally let myself see it without looking away. I didn't approve this. Why is my card charged again? That was the first thing I said out loud when I finally sat on my couch and opened the email. But the room stayed silent. The kind of silence that presses on your chest and makes you feel smaller than you already do. I let the words hang there, as if saying them twice might change something. They didn't. Nothing moved. Nothing answered. I leaned back and just stared at the wall, feeling that quiet settle around me like a cold blanket. Sometimes silence feels sharper than insults. Tonight, it felt like a thin knife sliding under my ribs. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Anger is loud. This wasn't loud. This was numb. I looked around my home, the place I worked so hard to build, and for a moment it felt like it belonged to a stranger. I wondered how I had lived so long believing that kindness could soften people who never wanted to change. I thought of my mother. She always said Emily was delicate, fragile, a flower that needed careful hands. If Emily snapped, she was tired. If Emily took advantage, she didn't mean it. If Emily cried, the whole family turned toward her like she was the center of the universe. My father avoided conflict. He wasn't cruel, just absent in every decision that mattered. So the weight always fell on me. The emotional gaps, the financial gaps, the peacekeeping, the fixing. I became the one who held everything together because no one else would. I used to convince myself that stepping in meant I mattered. I told myself that being the reliable one was its own kind of love. But sitting there, staring at my quiet living room, I finally saw the truth. I was needed, not valued, a place to land, not a person to cherish. I thought back over the last few months. Each memory felt heavier than the one before it. Emily only called when she needed a deposit covered. She never asked how I was doing. She never wondered if I was stretched thin or tired or lonely. She cried when she wanted more. She used tears like keys, unlocking doors she had no right to walk through. And every time I suggested a limit, even a gentle one, she would say, why are you making everything so hard? Then she'd sniffle, and I'd hear her breath catch, and I knew what would come next. My phone would ring minutes later. My mother's voice would drop into that soft, scolding tone she saved for me. Please, don't stress your sister. She's under so much pressure. I always backed down. I always said I would handle it, because giving was the only way I felt included at all. I sat there now, fingers resting on my knees, trying to understand how long I had traded pieces of myself just to keep the peace. Years, I realized. Years of buying my place at a table that still pushed me away. My laptop was open beside me, the email glowing on the screen. I pulled it closer and read it again. A payment confirmation from the wedding planner. A charge I never approved. An upgrade I didn't know about. I scrolled through the invoice 3 times, each line pulling the numbness deeper. Floral premium tier. Seating redesign. Venue decor elevation, all charged to me. I rubbed my forehead, feeling a slow ache rise. I had already paid more than I should have. I had already swallowed every bruise of disrespect handed to me these past weeks. But this charge, this quiet little theft wrapped in pretty words, shifted something inside me. It wasn't rage. Rage is wild. This was calmer than that. This was the first flicker of something I had never allowed myself to feel. Awakening. A small crack of truth breaking open inside me. I picked up my phone because I needed clarity. Not an argument, just clarity. I needed to hear her say it. I needed the truth from the only person who had taken more from me than anyone else ever had. I scrolled to Emily's name. My thumb paused because part of me still hoped this was a mistake. Maybe the planner misunderstood. Maybe the charge was meant for someone else. Maybe Emily would explain it, apologize, say she didn't realize it went through my card. I held on to that thought for one more breath. Not because I believed it, but because letting go meant something in me would break for the last time. I pressed the call button. It rang twice. She answered with a voice so calm it chilled me more than anger ever could. What now? I swallowed. There's a charge on my card. I didn't approve it. I need to understand what happened. There was a pause, a soft exhale. Then her answer cut clean and cold. If you want credit, then don't come. For a moment, everything inside me went quiet. Not numb this time, clear. I held the phone to my ear, listening to the empty line, and felt something in me shift for good, like a door closing behind me and locking itself from the inside. I don't want your judgment at my wedding. That was the first thing Emily said when she called back. No greeting, no pause. Just that cold line hitting me like she had been rehearsing it. I held the phone a little tighter, trying to keep my breath steady. She went on before I could answer. And your energy has been off. I need everything perfect. I can't have you ruining the mood. I closed my eyes for a second, letting her words settle. They landed one after another, soft in tone, but sharp in meaning. I kept my voice calm. I only asked about the charge, that's all. She let out a small laugh, the kind that isn't loud but still cuts deep. You always need something, Sarah. A thank you, a gold star. You act like helping makes you a hero. Her voice stayed smooth, as if she was explaining weather patterns, not dismantling me piece by piece. I can't deal with that right now. I have a wedding to plan. I listened, not because I agreed, but because I needed to hear her fully. Every word she said told me who she had become, or maybe who she always was. I said quietly, Emily, I wasn't asking for credit. I was asking for clarity. She sighed, sharp and impatient. This is what I mean. You twist everything. You're making this about you on the most important week of my life. I felt something hollow move in my chest. You used my card without asking. I just needed an explanation. Well, she said, people expect the older sister to show up. That's the only reason you were invited in the first place. She said it casually, like it was obvious, like it was normal to treat family that way. But the way you're acting? Honestly, maybe it was a mistake. I didn't speak for a moment. I just stared at the floor, letting her sentence run through my mind. I used to believe I mattered because I showed up. I came when she cried. I paid when she needed help. I covered the gaps so she wouldn't fall. But now she said it plainly. I wasn't invited out of love. I was invited out of social expectation. Before I could form another sentence, I heard a rustle on the line and then my mother's voice. She must have been with her. Sarah, she said, already tired with me. Can you please not start drama right now? Your sister is under stress. I almost laughed, but the sound never left my throat. I asked about an unauthorized charge. That's all. My mother didn't pause. Then let it go. Why do you always need to pick at things? You know how emotional Emily is. I felt that old familiar sting, the same one that came every time my mother defended Emily before she knew the full story. Mom, I said softly, she used my card. Oh, please, she said. You make enough. Why are you acting like this is a problem? Just stop adding pressure. Her wedding is around the corner. There it was, the imbalance I had lived under my whole life. If Emily broke something, I was told to forgive. If Emily lied, I was told she didn't mean it. If Emily used me, I was told it wasn't a big deal. I carried the blame, the weight, the silence. She carried the sympathy. I felt something inside me tighten, not with anger, but with clarity. I said, I didn't want to fight. I only wanted honesty. Emily jumped back in, her tone colder than before. You're impossible. You always need to be part of everything. Just let me have this without you making it messy. I took a slow breath, grounding myself. I'm not making anything messy. I'm trying to set a boundary. Well, maybe you should have thought of boundaries earlier, she said, because it's too late now. For a moment, none of us spoke. The quiet stretched long, filling the space with all the things we had never said, and all the things we were finally admitting without meaning to. I felt the weight of years pressing against my chest. Years of bending, giving, smoothing over her chaos so she could shine. Years of believing my place was safe if I worked hard enough to earn it. I let the silence hold me. Then I said, "Okay," just one word. Even I was surprised by how steady it sounded. No yelling, no begging, just acceptance. The kind that doesn't come from giving up, but from finally seeing the truth without flinching. I ended the call myself. I set the phone down gently on the couch beside me. My hand lingered there for a moment. Not shaking, not tense, just resting. My breath felt heavier than any argument we could have had. I stared at the quiet room around me and felt something shift in the air. A slow pull away from everything I had spent my life holding together. I wasn't thinking of revenge. Not yet. I was thinking of survival, distance, space to breathe. A few minutes passed before the phone lit up again. A message this time. I picked it up, already knowing it wouldn't be kind. "Honestly, Sarah, it would be better if you just sat this one out." I stared at the words until they blurred. And in that blur, something inside me snapped with a soft, final click. "I guess you're not useful anymore." Those were the last words my mother said before hanging up earlier that week, and they stayed with me longer than I expected. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just sat there on my couch and let the silence spread around me like a slow tide. For the first time in years, no one needed a deposit, a bailout, or a last-minute rescue. No one was crying for help or hinting about bills they couldn't pay. My phone stayed still. My calendar was empty. And somehow that emptiness felt heavier than any task I had ever carried. I walked through the week in a haze, noticing small things I never had time to see. Dust on the corner of my coffee table, a tiny scratch near the cabinet door, the soft hum of the fridge that usually blended into the background of my responsibilities. I opened my laptop and realized I had no urgent emails from family, no emergencies waiting for my attention. I should have felt relieved, but instead, I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. I made coffee one morning and stood by the window with the mug warming my hands. The sky was pale and quiet. I asked myself a question I had avoided for years. Who was I when no one needed anything from me? I didn't know the answer. I had spent so long holding everyone else's world together that I never built my own. I sat on the couch and scrolled through old messages from Emily. Every few lines were the same pattern. "Can you cover this? Can you send a quick transfer? I'm short this month." Not one message asking how my day was. Not one celebrating anything I achieved. Not one simply saying she was grateful I existed. I went back months, then years. The pattern never changed. I was a lifeline, not a sister. I felt a strange ache settle behind my ribs. I had convinced myself for so long that giving made me part of the family. But if the only way you're included is through what you provide, you are not included at all. You're a function, a tool, a convenience wrapped in affection when needed, and tossed aside the moment you ask for honesty. Later that afternoon, a soft knock sounded at my door. I hesitated before opening it. My neighbor, Mrs. Hall, stood there with a warm smile and a small bag of lemons from her tree. "Thought you could use these," she said. Her kindness surprised me. I thanked her and stepped back so she could hand them over. She glanced at me and asked gently, "Are you going to the wedding? I heard you helped so much with it." Her voice was warm, free of judgment, but the question still made something pinch inside me. I felt my face tighten before I could stop it. I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "I'm not going." She blinked, confused. "Oh, I thought you'd be front row." I simply nodded. I didn't explain. I didn't try to soften the truth. I just let the silence sit between us, because explaining would mean defending myself, and I was too tired to justify why I no longer wanted to stand where I was never wanted in the first place. After she left, I sat down again and felt something settle inside me, something deeper and clearer than hurt. I wasn't heartbroken because I lost my place in the wedding. I was heartbroken because I never had a real place in their lives at all. I had built a role out of effort and hope, not love and reciprocity. That realization felt like a quiet door finally closing. It made me wonder about people like me, the ones who give until they are empty because giving feels safer than being forgotten. I found myself thinking about the weight of loyalty without acknowledgement, and how many people carry that same unspoken exhaustion. Sometimes I wonder what we owe to people who only remember us when they need something. Maybe the better question is what we owe ourselves after years of giving without being seen. I didn't expect the next moment to hit as hard as it did. Mrs. Hall knocked again softly, almost apologetic. "Sorry," she said. "I forgot to mention. I overheard something at the store. Your sister was telling people she paid for everything herself. She sounded proud." I felt the air leave my lungs in one long, slow breath. I didn't respond right away. I just stood there with the bag of lemons in my hand, realizing that the truth I had been trying not to face had been public long before I saw it for myself. Emily wasn't just erasing me. Quietly, she was rewriting the story out loud. I closed the door and leaned my head against it for a moment, feeling the weight of everything I had been afraid to admit settle firmly in place. The room around me felt different, almost unfamiliar, like I had stepped into a new chapter without meaning to. And in that quiet space, I understood something clearly. The day they stopped needing me was the day I finally saw who I was without them. I funded everything myself. That was the first line I saw when I opened Emily's social media that morning. The words sat under a smiling photo of her holding a glass of champagne, her caption talking about how hard she had worked, how many jobs she had taken, how proud she was to give herself the wedding she always dreamed of. I stared at the screen for a long time, letting each sentence sink in slowly, like cold water rising around my ankles. She had taken every piece of my contribution and turned it into her own accomplishment, not with anger, not with shame, just with confidence, so smooth, it almost looked honest. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't even whisper a complaint. I just felt something settle inside my chest, a quiet heaviness that didn't want to move. Watching someone rewrite your help as their triumph hurts in a way that doesn't explode. It sinks, it presses. It makes you question the memories you lived through. I opened my email and searched for the invoices. Venue deposit, catering advance, photographer agreement, all in my name. I clicked through them one by one, not because I needed proof, but because I needed to remember the truth before she twisted it past recognition. I didn't want her voice to become the only version of the story that survived. I clicked the next post. Emily wrote about saving every tip and making sacrifices. Underneath it, my mother left a string of heart emojis and wrote, "So proud of you, sweetheart." My father commented, "You earned this." I felt a small sting, not sharp, but steady. I knew they wanted a daughter they could brag about. Emily fit that idea better than I ever did. She looked delicate. She sounded grateful. She performed the part they wanted to show the world. I was the one who made things stable, then stepped aside so they could pretend the stability came from somewhere prettier. I leaned back on my couch and kept scrolling. Each post felt like a soft eraser brushing over the parts of the story where I existed. I paid for the venue. She called it her gift to herself. I upgraded the decor package. She said she had worked overtime to make it happen. I covered the photographer because she said she was overwhelmed. She told the world she picked him out after months of saving. The more I read, the quieter my thoughts became. It was almost peaceful, in a strange way, to watch the truth bend without feeling the need to chase it. I opened a folder on my laptop where I had kept screenshots and receipts. I went through them slowly, not to confront her, not to defend myself, just to hold on to reality. I didn't want to lose my own memories to someone else's storytelling. I whispered to myself, "This happened. I was there. I helped." Saying it out loud grounded me in a way I didn't expect. Maybe this was what healing looked like at the very beginning. Not fighting for credit, just refusing to forget the truth. As I scrolled further, I noticed how many people congratulated Emily for being so hardworking. My mother replied to one comment, "She always takes care of herself. So independent." I let out a slow breath. My mother had been waiting for a moment like this for years. A moment she could hold up to her friends. A moment she could brag about. I had given her many chances to be proud of me, but none of them fit the picture she wanted. I closed the app and let the silence settle again. I wondered if I had allowed this dynamic to grow by staying quiet too long. Maybe if I had spoken up earlier, my place wouldn't be this easy to erase. Maybe if I had said no once in a while, I wouldn't be treated like a tool with no feelings attached. Or maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe some people only love the version of you that is useful to them. My phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up, expecting another promotional email or work reminder. Instead, I saw a message from a distant cousin, Megan. We weren't close, but she was kind the last time I saw her. Her message was short. "Why didn't you come to the dinner last night? Emily said you were too jealous to attend." I felt my breath catch. Not in shock, but in recognition. The rewrite of history wasn't just happening online. It was happening in real time, being fed to people who didn't know the real story. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling the edges of something sharp and quiet rising inside me. Not anger, not revenge, but awareness. And as that awareness spread through me, I realized that the version of the story Emily was telling had only one missing character: me. "I heard you feel threatened by my happiness." That was the first rumor that reached me, delivered through a cousin's hesitant voice over the phone. I sat still when I heard it, letting the words roll through me like slow wind. Threatened, as if joy was something Emily owned, and I was trying to steal. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just closed my eyes and let the truth settle. She was rewriting the story again, flipping the script the same way she used to do when we were kids. When she broke something, she cried first so everyone rushed to protect her. When I tried to explain, I was told to stop making a scene. I thought I had outgrown those memories, but the way the rumors spread made them rise again, sharp around the edges. I remembered school mornings when she took my things without asking. If I protested, she'd whisper, "You hate seeing me happy, don't you?" Then she'd run to our mother, and I'd stand there holding pieces of the truth no one wanted. This time, I decided to show up. Not to defend myself, not to fix anything, just to see the truth for what it was. There was a small family gathering that weekend, meant to celebrate the days leading up to the wedding. I walked in quietly, carrying nothing but my own calm. The room hushed a little when I entered. Eyes drifted toward me, then away. Whispers fluttered behind hands and half smiles. I felt every look land on my skin. Not painful, just confirming what I already knew. People didn't see me. They saw the story Emily had fed them. A relative approached me with an awkward smile. "Are you upset that Emily has outgrown you?" he asked, as if he was genuinely confused. The question didn't sting. It just settled inside me like a final puzzle piece. I answered softly, "No. I'm disappointed she thinks that's the story worth telling." My voice didn't shake. I didn't raise it. I didn't try to make him understand anything more. I had learned that truth doesn't always need an audience. I stepped farther into the room and watched Emily from a distance. She stood surrounded by a small group, tilting her head sweetly, touching her wrist to her chest like she was overwhelmed by all the attention. She soaked it in like warmth, her laughter soft and practiced. When someone asked if she and I were close, she gave a tiny sad smile, the kind she used when she wanted sympathy. She said, "Sarah has always been complicated." The group nodded in gentle pity. She played the misunderstood bride perfectly. My mother drifted nearby, retelling a smaller, safer version of Emily's fiction. "They just see things differently," she said. "Emily tries so hard. Sarah can be difficult sometimes." I watched her hands move as she spoke, smoothing the air, shaping the narrative. trying to keep herself comfortable inside a story that never challenged her view of her daughters. I sat on a small couch in the corner, letting the noise fade into a soft hum. The lights reflected off a nearby picture frame, and for a moment I stared at it without seeing the image. I thought about everything I had given, everything I had carried without asking for anything back. And I felt the quiet rise in my chest again. Not pain, not anger, just clarity. I had spent years trying to belong in a place that only valued me when I stayed silent. I looked around the room and realized no one here knew me beyond what I provided. Not my strengths, not my dreams, not my quiet efforts. They only knew the version of me that made their lives easier. It struck me gently, almost peacefully, that I had a choice now. I could keep fighting for a seat at this table, or I could step into the truth and finally choose myself. I leaned back slightly, letting that thought settle. I let myself imagine a life where I didn't bend until I disappeared. A life where my worth didn't depend on how quickly I fixed someone else's crisis. A life where my absence would mean something to me, even if it meant nothing to them. That idea felt like the first deep breath I had taken in years. I stood after a while, walking toward the refreshment table just to give my hands something to do. As I reached for a glass of water, I heard my own name drift from behind a small group gathered near the doorway. Emily's voice carried just enough to reach me. "Sarah begged to be invited," she said lightly. "But I'm tired of being used. I had to set boundaries for my own sanity." The room didn't spin. My chest didn't tighten. My eyes didn't burn. I just stood still, letting her words sink into the space they deserved. For the first time, they didn't make me shrink. They made something in me rise, quiet and steady. In that moment, I knew I wasn't losing a family. I was finally seeing one clearly. "I think it's best if you go." That was the last thing my mother whispered to me at the gathering, her eyes darting around as if my presence might stain the air. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded once and walked out the door. The cool night air hit my face like a quiet release. It felt cleaner than anything I had breathed in weeks. I stood there for a moment, letting the breeze slide across my skin, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to freedom. On the walk home, the sidewalks glowed under weak streetlights. My footsteps sounded just a little too loud in the empty night. I kept thinking about how betrayal rarely arrives like an explosion. Most times it drips slowly, drop by drop, until the cup sits full and unnoticed, then spills all at once. My cup had spilled the moment I heard Emily lie about me in that room. Every drop before that suddenly made sense. When I reached my apartment, I set my keys on the table and exhaled deeply. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing clearly. I couldn't keep living as the version of myself they preferred. The quiet one, the dependable one, the one who gave until she collapsed. So I started pulling back, not with anger, but with intention. I stopped replying to every message the moment it arrived. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped offering help before anyone even asked. I just breathed. The days that followed moved differently. At work, my boss paused one morning and looked at me with mild surprise. "You seem sharper this week," he said, "more present." I just smiled and said I was sleeping better. The truth was simpler than that. I wasn't pouring my energy into a black hole anymore. At lunch, my friend Crystal studied my face while we sat outside the cafe. "You look less tired," she said gently. "Lighter." I didn't explain why. I didn't tell her that removing myself from my family's constant demands felt like letting go of a weight I thought was part of my body. I just said, I needed a break. She nodded, accepting it with the ease of someone who didn't expect me to carry her world for her. Inside me, something small and steady began to grow, a spark of self-protection, a quiet reminder that I was allowed to take care of myself without apologizing. It wasn't loud or triumphant. It was soft, like the first warm day after winter, something I almost didn't notice at first. But Emily noticed. She always noticed when her world lost a servant. The messages started slowly. We need to talk, then faster. You're being dramatic, then longer. Paragraphs filled with guilt and accusation. I'm doing my best and you're making everything harder. You're abandoning your family. You're acting jealous. Why are you trying to ruin my wedding? I read them quietly, one by one, letting each sentence show me who she really was. Not the delicate flower my mother insisted she was. Not the misunderstood bride she played in public. Just someone who relied on my silence to stay comfortable. My mother called twice, leaving voicemails that carried the same old tune. You know how sensitive your sister is. Please don't escalate things. You're taking everything too personally. Hearing her voice brought back every moment in childhood when I was told to be older, calmer, stronger, quieter. I deleted the messages without listening to the end. For a week, I stayed quiet. Not out of fear, out of choice. I wanted to hear what my own voice sounded like, without theirs pressed over it. Then one afternoon, after another long guilt-filled text from Emily, I finally replied, just once, just enough. Take care of your wedding. I am done funding it. I stared at the screen after sending it, feeling the calm spread through me in slow waves. I expected anger. I expected fear. Instead, I felt steady. I felt like I had placed a single brick at the beginning of a wall I should have built years ago. Her response came instantly, faster than I could lock the phone. If you embarrass me, I will make sure everyone knows the truth. I read it twice. The threat wasn't loud, but it was revealing. She wasn't worried about losing me. She was worried about losing the version of me she could control. I set the phone down slowly, letting her words echo and fade. And in the quiet that followed, I felt the distance between us becoming real, like a clean line drawn across a map I finally understood. I need you to fix this. That was the first message I woke up to the next morning. No greeting, no explanation, just a command wrapped in panic. I stared at the words for a long second, letting their weight sit on my chest the way it always used to. But this time, it didn't sink. It slid off me like water. I set the phone down without replying. The silence felt like a door closing softly instead of slamming. Something inside me had shifted since the night of the gathering, steady and quiet, like a small flame that refused to go out. I realized I wasn't scared anymore. Not of their reactions, not of their disappointment, not of the stories they were telling without me. I walked to my desk and opened my laptop, the morning light stretching across the surface in a thin line. One by one, I opened my accounts. I canceled the automated payments I had set for the wedding. I removed my card from the registry platform Emily had quietly linked to. I took a breath after each click, feeling space return to parts of me I had forgotten I owned. It wasn't revenge. It was reclaiming. A boundary finally being drawn in ink instead of pencil. I didn't announce anything. I didn't warn her. I just made the changes because they were mine to make. I stood a little straighter afterward, surprised by how empowering it felt to protect parts of my life I had handed away so easily. Emails began rolling in within hours. A florist requesting updated payment information. A photographer confirming the remaining balance. A planner gently asking if my involvement was continuing. I read each message without flinching. This was the moment people who take you for granted finally hit the wall they pretend doesn't exist. Some people only respect boundaries when they collide with them. That afternoon, the real storm started. Emily's messages came in waves. First, she tried sweetness. I know you're stressed. We can fix this together. Then confusion. Why are vendors reaching out? Did you touch something? Then anger. You're trying to ruin everything. Then the tears. I can't believe you would abandon me like this. I thought you loved me. Then the threats again. If you embarrass me, I swear I'll expose what you're doing. I sat on my couch with the phone in my hand, watching the text roll across the screen like changing weather. I didn't respond. Not once. My silence felt like the strongest sentence I had ever said. Somewhere in that stillness, I felt a deep question rise in me, soft but unmistakable. How many people reach a turning point like this? A moment when they finally stop being afraid of disappointing those who never valued them in the first place. I let that thought sit beside me, calm and honest, because it was the truest thing I had felt in years. The rest of the day moved quietly. I made coffee, I cleaned my kitchen, I folded laundry with a steady rhythm. Each small thing felt different, as if I had been living in a room full of noise, and someone had finally turned off the television. For the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It steadied me. Near evening, I checked my email again out of habit. A new message sat at the top from the wedding venue. My stomach tightened, not in fear, but in awareness. I opened it slowly. The coordinator wrote, "We noticed a change in the payment method earlier today. Emily removed your card from the system. Please confirm any remaining involvement on your end." I read that line twice. Emily removed my card. She hadn't asked. She hadn't told me. She just acted, fast and quiet, like someone setting up a move they hoped I wouldn't see. For a moment, the room felt still, as if the air itself leaned in to listen. She was planning something, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one in the dark. "I can't believe you would do this to your own sister." That was the first call of the morning. No hello, no pause, just accusation. I held the phone to my ear and let the words pass through me without catching. Then I answered with the same sentence I had repeated in my head all night. "I paid for what I agreed to. I am no longer funding lies." The silence that followed was short and sharp. They hung up before I could finish breathing out. Another call came minutes later. A different relative, same anger, same script. "Emily said you demanded your money back to ruin the wedding." I listened quietly, my heartbeat steady, my voice even. "I paid for what I agreed to. I am no longer funding lies." It was the only truth I trusted myself to say. Anything more would drag me into their drama again, and I was done being pulled. By noon, the calls felt like a storm that had been waiting to break. My phone lit up with names I hadn't heard from in months. People who never checked on me now felt entitled to judge me. The pattern was clear. They didn't want my side. They wanted a villain. And Emily had given them my face. I sat on my couch with my legs tucked beneath me and let the noise wash over me. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I didn't beg them to understand. For the first time in years, I felt a strange calm settle through my chest. It was the kind of calm that comes when you finally stop chasing fairness from people who enjoy misunderstanding you. I kept repeating my one line because it grounded me. It reminded me that I had stepped out of a role I never should have held in the first place. In the afternoon, my aunt called. She didn't even try to hide her frustration. All she wanted was a beautiful wedding. Why couldn't you support her without making it about money? I closed my eyes for a moment and let the quiet between us settle. I paid for what I agreed to. I am no longer funding lies. My voice didn't shake. Hers did. She muttered something about jealousy and hung up. Jealousy. That word felt almost embarrassing to hear. I wasn't jealous. I was tired. There is a difference, and it's a big one. People who cared about me would have asked what happened. They would have listened instead of attacking. But they didn't want truth. They wanted a simple story that made Emily look like the fragile bride and me like the heartless sister. I made tea and sat by the window, letting the warmth settle into my hands. I thought about how often I had tried to explain myself in the past, how many times I had twisted myself into shapes that fit their expectations. This time, I didn't bend. I didn't try to fix their opinions. I didn't try to earn a place at a table that had never been mine. The strength felt new, but it also felt like something I should have known long ago. The messages kept coming. Some were long paragraphs packed with guilt and warnings. Others were short, sharp jabs. "This is why people pull away from you. You're proving her right. Why can't you just be happy for your sister?" I let them pile up without answering. I didn't owe explanations to people who saw me only when they needed someone to blame. By evening, Emily shifted tactics. She started using mutual relatives as messengers. "Emily says she forgives you if you fix this." Emily says you're destroying her reputation. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. It amazed me how desperately she tried to keep me in the role of provider. Without my money, her entire story cracked. The sun was beginning to set when my phone rang again, but the name on the screen stopped me cold. It wasn't family. It was a vendor. I answered slowly, unsure what new twist was coming. The voice on the other end was gentle but hesitant. Hi, is this Sarah? I wanted to confirm something. Emily told us you refused to pay because you were no longer invited. Before we update anything, I need to know if that's actually true. For a moment, the room felt incredibly still. My hand tightened around the phone, not in fear, but in recognition. The lie had spread so far it had reached people outside our family, people with contracts, people with records. I inhaled once, steady and slow, and prepared to answer. I don't know how much more I'm supposed to defend you. That was the thought that slipped out of me as I sat at my dining table with every receipt, screenshot, and confirmation spread across the wood like a quiet map of the past year. I didn't say it to anyone. I said it to the air, to myself, to the version of me that had always protected Emily's image no matter how deeply it hurt me. My fingers trembled a little as I opened each file, not from anger, but from the weight of finally seeing everything in one place. I told myself I wasn't gathering these things to expose her. Not yet. I did it because I needed to stop questioning my own memory. She had twisted the story so far that half the family believed I was the one sabotaging her. I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I needed something solid to hold when the guilt and old habits tried to drag me back into silence. As I looked at the charges, I remembered how easy it had always been for her. One text, one sigh, one "Sarah, please," and I would fold. I would cover. I would protect. I held every secret she asked me to hold, thinking it made me the stronger sister. Now I saw it made me the perfect shield. The knock on my door startled me. It wasn't loud, just firm enough to break my focus. When I opened it, Aunt Caroline stood there with her purse, clutched to her side, and a tired look in her eyes. She was one of the few relatives who didn't jump at the chance to judge. She stepped inside without a word, her gaze sweeping over the papers on the table. "I needed to see you," she said. Her voice was calm, but the kind that carries meaning beneath it. "Emily called me this morning. The things she's saying, they don't sound like you." I didn't sit right away. I wasn't sure how much of my truth I should let out. Years of habit made me want to smooth everything over, to say it was just a misunderstanding. But something inside me stopped my mouth from moving. Instead, I pulled out a folder and slid it toward her. "Look," I said softly. "Before you believe anything, just look." She hesitated for half a second, then opened it. As she flipped through the pages, her expression shifted slowly. First confusion, then realization, then anger that didn't belong to her, but to someone who had just recognized how deeply another person had been used. She looked up at me. "Sarah, she told everyone you demanded your money back to hurt her. You paid for almost everything." The words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they were new, but because someone finally said them out loud. Someone finally saw me clearly. I sank into the chair across from her, my hands folding together in my lap. "I never asked for credit," I said. "I never wanted praise. I just didn't want to be rewritten into a villain." Caroline set the papers down and leaned closer. "Then the truth needs to be told." My throat tightened. "I don't want to destroy her." "You're not," she said gently. "She's doing that on her own. You're just refusing to be her cover anymore." Her words pierced the center of me. I didn't realize how much I had been carrying until that moment. All those years of protecting Emily from consequences. All those times I smoothed things over for the sake of peace. Peace that never included me. Peace that was never real. I looked at the papers again. Every line showed something I paid for, something I did quietly, because I believed it meant I mattered. Now it only showed how comfortable she had become taking from me while calling herself independent. Caroline reached out and touched my hand. You can't heal if you're still shielding the person who hurt you. That sentence settled into me like truth I had been avoiding. It lingered, heavy but honest, sinking into the quiet corners of my chest. I nodded once, not because I was ready to expose anything, but because I finally understood I couldn't keep protecting her at the cost of myself. Caroline stayed a little longer. We talked softly. She didn't push. She didn't decide for me. She only listened, and it felt strange, having someone sit beside me without asking for anything. When she finally left, the house fell into silence again. But this time, it didn't sting. It felt like the start of something cleaner. I gathered the papers into neat stacks, my movements slow and steady. I wasn't choosing revenge. I was choosing clarity. I was choosing to stop lying on her behalf. I was choosing me. As I placed the last file into a folder, my phone buzzed. A new message. I expected another accusation, another guilt-soaked paragraph, another demand. But it wasn't Emily. It was the wedding planner. Hi, Sarah. We need to confirm whether you are attending the wedding or not. Your removal from the guest list has caused logistical confusion. I stared at the message for a long moment, my heart beating once, deep and low, like the sound before a storm fully arrives. Something had shifted again, and this time, I wasn't the one being erased quietly. I need you to stop acting like a victim. That line kept replaying in my head as I sat at my kitchen counter the next morning, the wedding planner's message still open on my phone. I whispered it to myself, because it was the exact tone Emily would use whenever she wanted to shut me down. But this time it sounded different. This time it pushed me toward a decision I had avoided for too long. I stared at the blank text box for a long minute. My hands didn't shake. My breath stayed steady. I typed slowly, choosing each word with the kind of care I had never given myself before. Thank you for the update. I will not be attending the wedding. Please proceed without including me in further plans. I read it twice. It felt clean. It felt final. No accusations, no wounds reopened. Just truth without noise. I hit send. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt the air in my chest settle. There was a quiet kind of strength in stepping back without a fight. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply accepting the reality they created. I set my phone down and breathed in deeply. It felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I had forgotten existed. I knew the family would hear about it soon enough. And for the first time, I didn't want Emily speaking for me. I opened the family group chat, which had been a mess of opinions and half-truths these past weeks. I didn't feel anger as I typed. I felt clarity. Hi, everyone. I want to share a few things directly. I was removed from the wedding guest list. I stepped away from further involvement after that decision. Attached are the payments I made toward the wedding. I added nothing emotional here, only facts. I attached every file, every receipt, every confirmation. No explanations, no stories, no pleas for understanding, just the truth she had twisted for so long. Then I pressed send. The reaction came fast. First, silence, like the whole chat inhaled at once. Then a single apology from my cousin, the kind that comes from someone who never meant harm but believed the louder voice. Then another message from an aunt who said she had no idea. And then another, softer one, simply saying, "Thank you for sharing this yourself." I felt my shoulders drop as I read them. Not relief, not victory, just the strange feeling of finally being seen clearly. Then, right on cue, Emily erupted. Her message popped up, sharp and frantic. "Are you happy now? You're trying to ruin my wedding. You're making everyone think I'm the bad guy." I stared at her words. I felt nothing rise inside me. No old instinct to fix this. No urge to soften anything. I understood something important in that moment. People who want your side will ask for it. People who don't will never care to hear it. I typed one sentence. "I hope your day is beautiful. I will not be part of it." I didn't wait to see what she said next. I muted the conversation and set my phone face down. A calm warmth moved through me, steady and grounding. I'd spent so many years believing it was my job to hold everything together. But choosing peace wasn't the same as abandonment. It was clarity. It was choosing myself. I stood by the window for a while, watching the soft morning light stretch across the street. I thought about all the roles I had played in this family: the helper, the giver, the fixer, and how none of them had ever made me feel safe or valued. Letting go felt like finally allowing myself to stop bracing for the next blow. When I picked up my phone again, there was one unread message. Not from Emily, not from my mother, not from anyone who wanted to lecture me. It was from her future mother-in-law. "Thank you for clearing this up. I had no idea." I read it 3 times. There was no judgment in it, no blame, just simple acknowledgement. And somehow, that one small sentence felt like a door opening to a life where I no longer had to shrink to keep other people comfortable. I didn't reply right away. I just held the phone in my hand and let the moment settle. Something had shifted again, deeper this time, and I could feel the change moving quietly through me, like a truth I was finally ready to live. "I hope you're happy now." That was the last thing Emily messaged me the night before the wedding. And strangely, it was the first thought that drifted through my mind when I opened my eyes the next morning. Not with pain, not with anger, just a soft awareness that her words no longer had a place to land inside me. I lay there for a moment, staring at the quiet ceiling, realizing I wasn't dreading this day. I wasn't replaying old arguments or wondering what she might say next. Instead, there was a stillness in me that felt new, almost unfamiliar. I got out of bed with a steady breath and opened the curtains. Sunlight filled the room in a warm, gentle sweep, and something inside me settled even deeper. I made coffee. I cleaned the kitchen. I folded the laundry I had ignored all week. Each small action felt like reclaiming a part of myself I had pushed aside, while trying to keep peace that was never real. I picked up a book I hadn't touched in months and read 3 chapters without checking my phone. It felt like breathing without weight on my ribs. Around noon, the messages started coming in. My phone buzzed once, then again, then again. First, it was my cousin Leah. "They're saying Emily paid for everything," she wrote, "but people are asking questions." Then my aunt. "Vendors are refusing to set up. They're asking Emily for payments. She looks lost." I set the phone down for a moment, letting the words sink in, not with satisfaction, not with anger, just quiet understanding. Actions always grow roots, and today hers were showing above the ground. Another buzz, another message. "The florist won't unload without payment. Emily keeps telling people she already handled it." Then a voice note from someone I barely talked to. Their whisper was sharp with disbelief. "Everyone's confused. She told us you backed out to be selfish. Now they're saying she never paid a single deposit." I leaned back in my chair. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt calm, like I had stepped off a spinning ride I never asked to be on. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence finally catching up to her. More messages continued, some shocked, some angry, some apologizing for believing her so easily. The story was unraveling in real time, thread by thread, in the exact place she tried so hard to build her perfect image. Then came another text from Leah. "Guests are whispering. People are asking who really paid. She's trying to smile, but it looks painful." I pictured the scene, the chairs half set, the arch unfinished, the relatives standing in clusters, murmuring in low voices, the truth spreading without me saying a single word. I had spent years protecting her from ripples like this. Today, I didn't step in. That alone felt like freedom. Minutes later, another update came through. "Her fiancé's family looks confused. Someone showed them your receipts." I exhaled slowly. I wasn't happy it had come to this, but I wasn't carrying guilt either. I had told the truth once, calmly and directly. That was the extent of my involvement. Everything happening now is between her, her choices, and the people she had lied to. I walked into the living room and opened the windows. Cool air drifted in. The quiet of my house felt almost sacred compared to the chaos happening miles away. I sat on the couch and held my mug with both hands. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of liberation that wasn't loud or dramatic, just steady, clean, mine. Another buzz. Her mom just yelled at her in front of two guests. People are staring. I didn't reply. Then moments later, one more message. Emily's trying to blame you, saying you ruined her day. I closed my eyes for a moment. I knew that tone. I knew that desperation. I had heard it countless times whenever her lies started slipping. But this time, her voice wasn't pulling at me. It was fading, like an old echo drifting off into distance. I chose peace today. Real peace. The kind that comes from letting the truth breathe on its own. I placed my phone on the table and stood up, deciding to make lunch, deciding to continue with my day as if her wedding had nothing to do with me anymore. But then my phone buzzed again. One single message. One that made me pause in the doorway. It was from Leah. She sent a photo. Emily backstage, makeup streaked, hair undone, mouth twisted mid-scream, and the caption, "She's saying you ruined her life." I stared at the picture slowly, the way you look at something that used to hurt you but doesn't anymore, and all I felt was quiet, steady distance. I didn't lie, Emily wrote that morning, as if starting her sentence with denial would somehow make it true. I read the message while sitting at my dining table, the room still quiet, the light soft. My body didn't tighten the way it used to. I felt steady, almost distant, like her words were sliding across a surface they could no longer stick to. I set my phone down and let the silence stretch. This was the price of lies working its way through her life, not mine. By noon, the fallout had spread wider. A cousin messaged me saying, "She's telling people you blindsided her, but everyone saw the vendors asking her for payment. Nobody believes her anymore." I nodded to myself. Lies have short legs. They travel fast, but they never make it far. Then my phone rang. My mother's name lit up the screen. For a moment I stared at it, remembering all the times she had called only to repeat Emily's version of the world, assuming I was the problem because it was easier that way. This time her voice was small when she said, "Sarah, I need to understand what happened." It was the first time she had ever asked instead of told. I took a slow breath. "Do you really want the truth?" "Yes," she said quietly. "I think I failed to see it before." So I told her. Calm, simple, no emotion added, no emotion hidden. I explained every payment I made, every message, every time I stepped back without fighting. I explained how Emily removed me from the guest list before she told anyone. I told her how Emily insisted I keep paying even after being pushed out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I just stated facts, steady and measured, the way adults speak when they're done carrying someone else's chaos. When I finished, my mother didn't speak. For a long moment, I heard only her soft breathing on the other end. Then her voice broke, not dramatically, just enough to be real. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I should have asked sooner. I should have seen you were hurting." I closed my eyes. It wasn't a perfect apology. It wasn't enough to undo years, but it was the first honest crack in a wall that had stood between us for too long. And something inside me eased just a little. "It's all right," I said gently. "I'm not angry anymore." "I didn't know," she whispered. I believed everything she said. "I know," I replied. "And now you know the truth." Another long silence. Then she said, "I'm proud of you. You handled this with more grace than I ever did." The words landed softly, like something I didn't expect but had needed more than I realized. When our call ended, I sat still for a moment, letting the shift settle inside my chest. Quiet justice. Lies exposing themselves without me lifting a finger. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt clean. All afternoon, relatives reached out. Some apologized. Some admitted they never fully believed Emily's stories. Some danced around the truth, embarrassed they hadn't asked me directly. I answered each message with the same calm tone. I didn't gloat. I didn't correct anyone harshly. I didn't explain more than necessary. The truth was already doing what truth does. It didn't need help. By evening, the tone of messages changed. People weren't whispering anymore. They were confronting her, calling out the contradictions, asking why she pretended to pay for things she didn't, asking why she blamed me when she had removed me first. For once, I wasn't the shield she hid behind. I made tea and sat by the window. The quiet felt earned. My breathing felt steady. A part of me wondered if this was what healing sounded like when it finally had space. My phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't another relative. It was Emily. The preview of her message showed the first few words. "Sarah, please, I need your help." I opened it slowly. It was long, too long. Paragraph after paragraph of apologies, explanations, excuses, fear. She said she never meant for things to get out of hand. She said she didn't know why she lied. She said people were turning on her. She said her reputation was falling apart. She said she needed me to fix it. At the end, she wrote, "Please, you're the only one who can save me." I stared at the screen, feeling that old instinct tug at me, the one that always made me step in, patch things up, protect her from the truth. But that instinct didn't move this time. It stayed still, quiet, no longer mine to obey. I set the phone down without replying, feeling the weight lift from my hands. The price of lies had finally come for her, and for once, I wasn't standing in the way. When I finally opened Emily's message, I read it slowly, one line at a time. It was long, almost desperate in places, but even through the tears in her words, I felt the same familiar shape. Every sentence curved back toward herself. She apologized, yes, but only in ways that told me how hard this had been for her, how embarrassed she felt, how frightened she was of what people were saying. She wrote, "I'm sorry everything got twisted," as if the twisting had happened by accident, carried by the wind, not by her choices. I sat with it for a moment, letting the truth of it settle in my chest. She wasn't reaching for me. She was reaching for rescue. There's a difference, and I finally understood it without guilt softening the edges. Forgiveness, I realized, doesn't always mean returning to the same room where you got hurt. Sometimes it means leaving the door unlocked so the past can breathe, but choosing not to walk inside again. I breathed in, slow and steady, and typed a reply that felt like a quiet exhale. "Emily, I wish you well. Truly. I hope your marriage brings you peace, but I won't be stepping back into the role I used to fill. Take care of yourself." I read it twice. It didn't shake my hand. It didn't make my stomach twist. It felt clean. When I sent it, a soft stillness filled the room, settling over me like a blanket that had waited too long to be used. Her response came fast, a flurry of bargaining. "Can't we talk? You're overreacting. Just say you didn't mean it. You're being cruel." Then another apology. Then another attempt to rewrite the weeks leading up to the wedding. Then silence. Then another message. "Please don't do this to me. I need you." Each one slid across my screen, and with each one, I felt a strange strength build itself in the quiet parts of me. The part that used to run, the part that used to fix, the part that used to climb into her storms and try to hold the sky open. I didn't reply. I didn't even feel the pull to. That was the moment I knew the chapter had closed. Not with anger, not with triumph, just with clarity. I spent the rest of the afternoon folding laundry, wiping the counters, moving through my home like someone who had just reclaimed the air. It felt strange, this peace. New, almost unfamiliar, like a room I had never allowed myself to enter because I had been too busy putting fires out in other people's homes. I kept walking around, touching the back of a chair, smoothing a blanket, grounding myself in the quiet truth that nothing in my life needed to be earned through usefulness anymore. My identity wasn't tied to saving someone who didn't want to grow. I could still care without carrying. I could still love without losing myself. When I made tea and sat by the window, A sense of calm ran through me that felt deeper than relief. It felt like return, like I had come back to a version of myself that had waited patiently behind all the years of being needed more than I was valued. My phone buzzed again, but this time the notification looked different. The preview showed one short line, formal and almost stiff, sent from an email address I hadn't seen in a long time. Sarah, I would like to meet with you. Please read the attached letter. I stared at the name for a long second, feeling the air in the room shift. My father, the man who had stayed distant, silent, easy to disappear. The man who had watched the family fracture from far away and never stepped in. The man who had left me to navigate sisterhood and survival on my own. My heart didn't race. It didn't pound. It simply tightened, steady and thoughtful, as if bracing itself for a truth I hadn't asked for. I opened the letter. I arrived at the park a few minutes early and sat on the cold bench, watching the wind shift through the trees. When my father walked toward me, he looked older than I remembered, like time had pressed on him in quiet ways I never noticed before. He sat down beside me without speaking. For a moment, all I heard was the soft scrape of branches overhead. Then he said, "Sarah, I'm sorry." The words felt strange coming from him, careful and heavy, like he had practiced them but still wasn't sure if he deserved to say them. I kept my eyes on the lake and let the silence guide me. I didn't need to respond right away. After everything I had lived through, pauses no longer scared me. They made room for truth. He sighed. I stayed out of things because I thought it kept the peace. I thought being neutral was better than taking sides. But I see now I left you alone. I let too much happen without stepping in. I nodded once. I understood his logic, even if it had cost me more than he ever realized. You weren't the only one who did that, I said quietly. But I appreciate you saying it. He turned toward me, his voice shaking a little. I'm proud of the life you've built. You held everything together when no one gave you anything back. I should have told you that years ago. Hearing it didn't fix the past, but it settled something inside me. Not a dramatic shift, just a soft release, like a knot unwinding after being pulled too tight for too long. I didn't need validation, yet receiving it felt like someone had finally turned on the light in a room I'd cleaned by hand in the dark. We talked about my work, my plans, my quiet new boundaries. He listened without interrupting, and that alone felt like a kind of healing I never expected. For the first time in a long time, I spoke without fearing that my words would be turned into weapons against me later. I didn't have to defend myself. I didn't have to explain my worth. I could simply talk, and he simply heard me. When he stood to leave, he touched my arm gently. You deserved better, Sarah. I hope you know that now. I gave him a small smile. I do. As I watched him walk away, I felt something strange and warm move through my chest. Not forgiveness as a grand gesture, more like quiet recognition that some people can grow, even if it comes late, and some things can settle without reopening wounds. On the walk home, the sky looked softer than it had in weeks. Maybe it was just me. I kept thinking about how peace doesn't always arrive as an apology wrapped in perfect timing. Sometimes it appears as acknowledgement. Sometimes it appears as courage. Sometimes it appears as your own voice, finally steady in your chest. I thought about everyone who had listened to this story, who had stayed with me through the mess, the unraveling, the rebuilding. The idea brought a gentle warmth to my throat. If this journey has meant something to you, I found myself whispering, I'm grateful you walked it with me. And if you want to stay for whatever comes next, your support means more than you know. The closer I got to my building, the lighter my steps felt. I wasn't carrying the wedding anymore. I wasn't carrying Emily's expectations, or my mother's assumptions, or the silence that used to sit between me and my father. I was just carrying myself, and for the first time, that felt like enough. When I reached my door, I placed my key in the lock and paused for one quiet breath. Then I turned it and stepped inside. Sometimes peace is the sweetest revenge.